don't hold the baby too much, don't cuddle the baby too much, don't sleep close to your baby too much. All of these things that are the most instinctual, intuitive things for us to be doing.
Welcome to the podcast. This is Tracy Donegan. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Greer Kirshenbaum, a neuroscientist, mom, and doula. Greer is the author of a fantastic new book for parents and professionals called The Nurture Revolution: How to Grow Your Baby's Brain and Transform Their Mental Health Through the Art of Nurtured Parenting. And now I bring you Dr. Greer Kirshenbaum.
Hi, everybody. You are very welcome to my next edition of my next podcast. This is what we're doing these days. And I want to, invite you to welcome Dr. Greer Kirshenbaum to the podcast. And Greer and I have spoken over the years, and we've collaborated on different projects, and we are very much on the same page when it comes to, supporting parents to have the healthiest pregnancy possible, healthiest postpartum possible, and really healthiest life possible. But Dr. Kirshenbaum is not only an expert in brain science, so she is a neuroscientist and a doula and mom, and has just published a really, really brilliant book that should be mandatory reading for all parents, and I think all providers who are involved with that, with women who are starting their families, because there is so much in this book to support parents, to support their own mental health and their babies. And we're going to dive right in. Welcome. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you,
really
Tracy. I'm so excited to be here. It's been a long, I remember we were in touch right at the beginning of all of my work with families, and when I started as a doula, and it's so nice to still be connected in this way.
It's and I think it was just before COVID, or a year or two, maybe a year before or two before COVID, when we initially connected. And you've had quite the journey. So tell me a little bit more about your background and then why you wrote this book.
Yeah, for sure. So my background is in science, academia. Right after high school, volunteered in a neuroscience lab, and I was sort of headed to medical school, but I did my undergrad degree in neuroscience and just really fell in love with it, really wanted to pursue it. And I did a PhD in neuroscience after that, a postdoctoral fellowship at Columbia University. And by the end of that time, I had gathered so much information about how early life experience through pregnancy and the first 3 years of a baby's life is so important in building their mental health for the rest of their life. And our society has so many mental health struggles, and so many of us are so focused on trying to, even within this realm, make mental health better for moms and dads, postpartum, during pregnancy, throughout, all of childhood. But no one is looking at the place where mental health is formed or highlighting it from 0 to 3. And so I really, was in a position where I was like, people have to know this information. It's so important. And it's still gaining, more momentum and more, attention. And I think anyone who does pick up the book and gets into this, they really understand it. And it's making a huge difference for families to really know the truth about these early years.
Yeah. And the truth is not always comfortable.
Yep.
To hear. And I think I found that myself because the gentle birth work and your work is so aligned. Because again, our focus, for so much of our program is that we want to help moms and partners, develop, coping skills and, self-compassion skills, all these things that I would love to see being taught in school and not just in pregnancy. So that, they're building this mental resiliency but not just for themselves, but the fact that, we're growing a baby and our baby is impacted by, all the chemical messengers in our body and our stress levels and everything can impact what chemical messengers we are, I think you refer to it as a brain bath, and
Hmm.
and we talk about birth basking, as in how can we help moms literally marinate their
Yeah,
babies in more oxytocin and rather than stress hormones. But
exactly.
everybody's stressed. So when we have these conversations, it can be really difficult here. I my own personal experience was like, "Ah, how did I not know this?" And then when you realize, oh, this is not just somebody's opinion. There's a quite a wide body of research now showing what is happening to, the infant brain before we even arrive into the world,
Yeah.
that mom's body is the environment for constructing that brain. But when
Hmm.
you don't know that, then of course there's all of this guilt that, and that, oh, did I damage my baby because, I had a really bad day yesterday.
Of
So I wanted to
course.
start off, I guess, by reassuring parents that there's so much that you can do to support your baby before birth and your baby's
Hmm.
mental health before birth. And there's so much more you can do after birth as well. So this is not a one and done thing. This is a journey for you and your baby, and babies are resilient as well. So because it feels like when I started, upon this research and the idea of infant mental health, I thought, oh, is this just going to be another stick for moms to beat ourselves up
Right.
over,
Yeah.
because we can't control
So
every
much.
single thought or stress or everything. And that's,
Hmm.
part of, control the controllables. So, but what we can do is notice when we're having a reaction, and is there a way that we can, let that reaction go, or be more self-compassionate to ourselves. It's the awareness first that we're having it, and then we can do something about it. So for anyone that's
Yeah.
listening out there and already feeling distressed about, this topic, and, please be gentle with yourself, and as we learn more, but please also remember your babies are really resilient, and everything you're doing postpartum, nurturing your baby's brain, nurturing your own brain, it will absolutely have a beneficial effect. So,
Yeah.
um,
So any amount of nurture is so beneficial. I think through a journey of conception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, everybody's going to everyone's going to be probably pretty stressed because
yeah.
our life stressful right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and everyone's going to have their unique challenges that are extra stressful. And some
Yeah.
happen in conception, some in pregnancy, some in birth, some immediately postpartum, some with breastfeeding. You know what I mean? Like we all kind of get
Yeah.
something
And
to
then
go
if you
through.
even, there's even some research now, if you look at looking at preconception stress levels, I'm like, oh, okay, I have to draw a line in the sand somewhere, because about I think 50% of pregnancies are not planned.
Yeah.
So if you just realized I had a really stressful couple of months before I got pregnant, again, take a breath.
Yeah, it
There's
doesn't make
so
sense
much we can do.
for, it doesn't make sense for a brain to be completely influenced by one event, one
Exactly.
month, right? Like, so, 0 to 3, like it's conception to 3, it's nearly 4 years. And the way that the emotional systems that make up our mental health are formed is a sample of that experience, right? And so some people learn about this before they have a baby or right after they give birth, and you can't change what's happened before, and that's fine. But any nurture that we add in, it's all
Yes.
beneficial. And some people come across this work after infancy, and they may
Mm,
have, participated in what I call like low nurture parenting styles. And I would assume most people will because that's, the norm, right? At least in
yeah.
North America and not in some other places.
Yes.
And you can still do a lot of nurture after 3 years as well. That will still be acting right in these circuits.
Yeah.
But it's not to take away from that message, that experience in those years. It really does matter. And um, it's never a parent's fault, of course not, if
Yeah.
there's low nurturing there. It's our society level change that we need to make, and
Yes.
to be really giving parents all the information. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's especially here in the US, it's at least in Canada, you have maternity leave, paid
Hmm.
maternity leave. And Whereas, yeah, in the US, we have moms who are returning to work sometimes within weeks of
Yeah.
giving birth.
Yeah.
And if they're lucky enough, they will have a family member, that can look after your little one. But in most cases, moms are bringing their little one to
Absolutely.
daycare.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think even some of these like practices for those moms who are in that situation and don't have any control over the fact that this is just how it is. This is,
Yeah.
reality of life, that these practices will be really helpful for them as well as they're, just nurturing themselves,
Yeah. And I think
and offering
that's
themselves compassion.
it's so important too, right? The self-compassion is so important. Every single parent does their best, and we need to love ourselves because I think every single parent does their best and also goes way above and beyond
Hmm.
um
Yeah.
for their babies, regardless of if they go back to work early,
Yeah.
anything. And it's also important for parents to know, like the research also shows us that it's not the quantity necessarily of time with the baby,
Yes.
it's quality time. And so if you are going back to work, you still have all night with your baby. You can sleep close to your baby. You have time off where you can connect and play and do all these wonderful nurturing practices. You will always be the most important relationship they ever have.
Hmm.
And when we can be there in that really present, attuned way, whenever we are together,
Yeah.
that makes a huge difference, right? Huge, huge difference.
Absolutely.
Hey there, if you're enjoying this conversation and are passionate about evidence based gentle parenting, the best way to support our work is to subscribe and share this episode with other amazing mothers and professionals in your life. Your support is so important to us and helps us reach more parents, more professionals with empowering content. So go ahead, hit the subscribe button and spread the love.
So why this book?
Yeah. Yeah. I was so fired up when I left academia to get the information to the public, and I thought a book was the best way to do that. So it actually started about 8 years ago. I wrote the first I sort of moved on from my position and just like started writing. I wrote the whole thing, and then, wanted more experience. So I worked with families for a number of years after as well. Also had my own son. And all that experience is there in the book. And it all
Yeah.
happened in the right way because it all flows together
Mm.
in a really important way, I think. But yeah, my goal with the book was reaching a wide audience, making the information accessible, understandable,
Yes.
and really clear. And I am getting great feedback from people that
It is
it's coming
accessible.
through that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's such a difficult topic. I mean, just, it's neuroscience, so
Hmm.
when I first heard that word, a long time ago, and I was like, neuroscience, that's just, yeah, that sounds like it's way up there and it's academic and yeah, it's a scary word. So
Yeah.
you've really made, and I think the whole tone of your book is very supportive and compassionate and really encouraging parents to give themselves that compassion. And it's a gentle guide to brain science, really, in
Yeah.
easy to understand language, because it's
Yeah.
a tricky topic.
That was, I think, one of the biggest things I spent all those years figuring out was what's the right level
Yeah.
of of science to go into. And yeah, it took a lot of practice, a lot of like talking to families and kind of feeling it out to see. And I think the science is still really is there and it's clear.
Yeah.
But it's funny, if I had actually written that book immediately after leaving the lab, I would have like been putting so much deep, deep science in. It would be like a textbook. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that it happened the way it did.
Yeah, it sounds like, it's, the universe conspired to make it happen. Yeah, the timing was perfect. I had that problem
Mhm.
as well when I'm trying to describe difficult concepts, and my husband would say to me, look, if you can't distill this down to like a one-liner, no one's going to get it. So
Right.
that's my baseline. Okay, how can I put this down to a one-liner that's people will, but I'm like you, I love the science end of things. So, and I want to share that, but it's like, not everybody
Hmm.
wants the deep dive into every citation that you've ever come across.
For sure.
Um, So why is nurturing so important
Hmm.
for infants and for parents themselves?
Yeah. And that's, I mean, the parent side is also really important to highlight. And I knew it was important, but as I was writing the book, it really became clear to me how both the baby's mental health and the parent's mental health are developing side by side,
Yeah.
almost in like mirror images of what's going on in the brain, and also in such deep relationship with one another, right? They're
Mhm.
creating mental health for each other back and forth. So so why is it important? It's really important because for babies, their brains are so plastic. They almost lack, you know, most of their brain connections at birth,
Mm.
and all the experiences we provide to babies, and especially like within a relationship, the experiences they get in
Mm.
a relationship, um, will connect to their brain cells in a certain way. And so when we are, nurturing to our babies, we can talk about what that means, what nurture means
Yeah.
after, um, their brain connections form in their stress system, in their emotional systems, in their fear systems, in their systems that underlie lifelong anxiety, depression, addiction,
Hmm.
lifelong relationships, self-confidence, self-worth, right? All these things that we are, define as mental health, and resilience, the ability to recover from a stressful event.
Sure.
All of those brain areas are formed in infancy, and they all critically depend on the relationships that we have. And so it's sort of like the like foundations of mental health, the kind of, we talk about it sometimes like a foundation of a house. If we
Yeah.
build it really strong, Harvard Center on Developing Child has lots of videos and great analogies to this. If we build the foundation really strong, mental health will be strong for life, and
Yeah.
physical health, because that's downstream of mental health. We need
Yes.
mental
Yeah.
health to have physical health. And then if we're not building a great foundation in early life, if we have low nurturing, it doesn't mean that we're determined to have poor mental health. Nothing's deterministic,
Sure.
but we're much more vulnerable. The structure is much more vulnerable as
Yeah.
we age.
So, like, if you build a house on poor foundations, the first big storm that comes in upends everything. So
Yeah.
similarly for if we don't have that really strong foundation, that when these big life events come along, and they do come along, and not
Hmm.
even the big life, but even smaller life events, they tend to shake us and shake our
Yeah.
foundations a lot more. Yeah, so I understand that's a really good example of
Hmm.
starting at the bottom as we build this house with a really good foundation for life. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
please
that is
continue.
a lot of people's experience, right? Everything might be cool and great until some kind of sort of major life challenge happens, and they're not able to cope, right? And they'll go into
Yeah,
an episode of mental health struggle, and
yeah,
often then that's kind of an invitation for a lot of people to do a lot of this other work of like figuring out what happened in early life and repairing some
yeah,
of that, and you
yeah.
know all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
It's very interesting when you talk about the fact that we need mental health for physical health as well, and this dynamic reciprocal relationship we have with our babies. It reminds me of, and it's not a pleasant topic to be thinking of, but I remember years ago in when I think it was the Ceausescu regime in Romania, and
Hmm.
when people went into the Romanian orphanages, and these kids they hadn't had like nurturing touch or any
Yeah.
like care provided really that was consistent, and you could see visibly. I know there's been all kinds of papers written around this,
Hmm.
how detrimental it is when kids aren't nurtured, really.
Yeah, and that's what our low nurture culture kind of touts. They're like,
Yeah,
feed them, especially at night. They're like, feed them, make sure they're dry, and then shut them out. Like, ignore them, forget
because you
it.
need your sleep. Yeah.
You need your sleep. That's it. Right. And that's, you know, very similar
Yeah.
to what those babies went through.
Yeah. We could do a whole other couple of episodes on just on sleep training and cry it out. I
Mhm.
came across a discussion very recently on an online forum of birth professionals talking about crying it out, and a comment was made that some babies just need space, and
Mhm.
I'm like, that just shows such a lack of understanding of the infant brain and how much and how damaging, crying
Yeah.
it out and this, and I know people have different versions of sleep training and but the idea that, oh no, some babies just need their space. I'm like, oh
Yeah,
no.
it's tough. Yeah, and to bring back like the parents' mental health too, right? Parents are also benefiting from close connected relationships with their babies. Their parenthood is another huge time of neuroplasticity, right? We have
Hmm.
three in our life. One is infancy, 0 to 3. One is about age 9 to 14, the adolescent time where the emotional system is
Hmm.
rewired as well. And then the last is parenthood, when we become parents. And so when we have a baby or spend a lot of time around a baby, because midwives, doulas, all of us who spend a lot of time with babies, we get those benefits too. Any allo parent would have that. Um, we have access to rewire the parts of our brain that were formed in our infancies. So I kind of talk about like our inner baby has this new chance to get nurtured again as we become parents. And the more closeness we have with our babies, the more responsive we are, the more oxytocin and dopamine and that whole cascade we get. And
Yeah.
that is really healing to our brains and our mental health. So for babies, they have a chance to grow a foundation for mental health. Parents have this opportunity to rewire their nervous
Yeah.
systems and their brains. And countless parents come to me with that comment. Like even before I went into the research, just like parenthood has been the most healing thing for me in the world. Um,
Right.
there's so many reasons for it, but
Yeah.
you know,
And it's interesting when we look at the research around self-compassion, that it is, a lot of the researchers will talk about self-compassion as a way to reparent
right.
ourselves,
Yes.
and to give her, and there's also this idea of the backdraft of sometimes when for anyone who's starting with, a meditation practice and especially for self-compassion, it can be a little bit triggering and distressing, because when we start to try to connect to times when we felt nurtured, there's a lot of people out there that cannot remember a
Hmm.
time in childhood when they felt nurtured, and
Yeah.
that's a huge moment for those parents when they realize, wow, it's upsetting to wow, I came from a low nurture family. My
Mhm.
parents did what absolutely their best, but when you realize, okay, so there's probably some things that I can do as I'm coming into parenting now, because most of us when we become parents, we're like, there's a lot of things that we don't want to do like our parents do. We want to do
Mhm.
things differently. I think that neuroplasticity in pregnancy really gives us a chance to, again, to reparent, to rewire our brains in different ways so that we can, be the parents that we want to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I see the motivation goes up so much for that
Yeah.
reason. And it's so nice that it's like the motivation is paired with that plasticity and the because whenever our brains have neuroplasticity, we have to have experiences to actually take advantage of that neuroplasticity, right? So the compassion
Mm.
practice, meditation practice, all of these are so fantastic. Um, I always encourage parents to build it in some way, right? And sometimes in relation with their baby, sometimes like as they're putting their
Mm.
baby to sleep or how they speak to their baby, speaking to themselves at the same time.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, having the baby also puts us in these positions daily where we have to notice our emotions, regulate our emotions, um, model them for our
Mm-hmm.
babies. And our babies just bring up so many emotions in us, both positive and uncomfortable, that we just have so many opportunities every single day to
Yeah.
be. changing and rewiring our brain, and we can't escape from them, right? Like that's why so many people can get healed, right? If they are guided in a
Yeah.
positive way.
And parenting is such a, especially, postpartum, it's such a new experience and again, in positive and negative ways.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the brain loves novelty. So if you have that motivation and it's like, and all of these new things are happening and all this huge adjustment. It also I just remembered, I remember years ago watching one of the videos on the still face
Yeah.
experiment. You're familiar with it. Will you just talk a little bit about what that experiment was? Because I think and I know for anyone who goes looking for it on YouTube in a minute, I found it a little bit triggering
It's
and
tough.
uncomfortable to watch because I
Yeah.
feel for these babies. But would you mind just talking a little bit about that? The still face experiment. It's such
Yeah, it's
a,
a really powerful video to look up. It's Ed Tronick's research from Harvard. And so he was studying, the connection between moms and babies and how babies are, always communicating and expecting communication
yeah,
from their parents. And so in the still face experiment, the mom and baby sit opposite each other and they're talking and interacting. And then the experiment is the mom, stops emoting, basically stops all expression, has a really blank face, is not reacting to the baby. And you can see the baby tries so many things.
mm,
He's, first they're like, "Hey mom, I'm here," like
yeah,
smiling and waving and all the usual things to be getting her attention. And then the baby gets really upset, starts to cry and fuss, and then eventually, loses postural control, like, arched back,
yeah.
really, really dysregulated. Um, and I believe that it lasts about 2 minutes, the still face, and then
It
mom
feels like a
comes
long
back.
time.
Yes, it does feel like a long time. And then mom comes back and repairs it, basically, right? And so it shows a few things. It shows that babies are always looking to be in relationship with us. They're always looking for a response, and it's very stressful when we're not responsive
Responsive.
to them. And it also shows, because we can't be responsive 100% of the time, we are going to miss
Hmm.
those cues sometimes. We are going to be
Yeah.
busy or, not all there, and we can repair it, right? And to show, like, the mom in the video does a great job of like, "Oh baby, I'm here. I'm,
Yeah.
I was distracted for a bit, but I'm back." And we can
Mhm.
always do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I think we're seeing this emergence, I think the last few years as well, of this focus on infant mental health. And because it was, when I first heard it, it was not something that like, babies have mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was talking to somebody recently and again, it was around, I think it was around, sleep training or something like that. And it was really focused on, really on the parents' needs. And again, we're talking about real life here. Parents have to go to work. They have to, get bills to pay, mortgages to pay.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing that, even, doing our best, there is that opportunity to repair and to reconnect. And it's
Yeah.
that, continuing that reconnection. But I like, it's like when I'm working with clients now and I encourage them to talk to their baby as if the baby understands every word you're saying. And like, even, having a conversation while you're changing the diaper. Is it okay if I change your diaper?
Mm-hmm.
And just being, respectful. But I've had some, again, this would be staff who have been, in the system a long time and wouldn't go for all of this, what they would consider this to be some way, new
Permissive.
agey
Yeah.
but when I mentioned that, I encourage parents to talk to the baby and, ask, is it okay if, we go and change your diaper now? And you're not sitting there going to wait for the baby to say, yes, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But these nurses were very dismissive of, like, you're asking the baby's permission, but really missing the point of it's about engaging respectfully and gently
Mm-hmm.
with your newborn, the way you would, you would want someone to engage with you if you
Yeah, for
didn't have
sure.
all of if you couldn't speak and you couldn't move, that, wouldn't you
Mm-hmm.
want to be treated gently and respectfully. So,
Yeah.
but it's interesting that I feel, especially here in the US, there is this so little focus on, we just do motherhood really badly here. Like we no paid maternity leave.
Yeah.
Every second child is in daycare. And that's just the way the system has been set up.
Yeah.
And it's made so difficult for mothers just to get just to get good care of pregnancy. The whole insurance thing. It's Canada. You guys have really done well for moms, and
Yeah,
Europe
they
as
even did
well.
better recently. They extended, people can now take an 18-month maternity leave. And paternity leave, I don't believe is, I think actually, I think dads get 8 weeks. I
Hmm.
think dads get 8 weeks of paternity leave. Um, and other people work out different, depending on the workplace, it can be different too. But
Yeah.
it's great. And dads and partners need that time too. Moms of course need it for, at least a few months. I mean,
Yeah.
ideally I would say at least 12 months up to 3 years,
Yeah.
which a lot of
I would be
European
thinking, yeah,
countries
two
do.
years minimum. Yeah, would be perfect.
Excuse me. Um, but in the States it doesn't even come close. And so yeah, so partners also, they need about 3 or 4 months for their
Yeah.
parent brain to change too. They need to have that much, you know, contact and help,
Hmm.
helping out with the baby to also have
Yeah. And
those
I think,
benefits.
especially at the moment as well, because we were seeing, more research coming out on dad's mental health and the increase in depression and anxiety postpartum as well. And for the longest time, dads were just kind of ignored. Hey, dads were left out of the equation,
Yeah,
and we just
yeah,
weren't having this conversation with them. And it's like, your mental health is equally important
for
here.
sure.
So
Yeah,
let's,
it's 1 in 10 dads are
yeah,
having postpartum depression
that's
and
that's the
anxiety,
official
and that's
numbers. And
admitted. Yeah.
yeah,
And then if mom has something, dad's chance is a lot higher, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
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 So tell me why somebody should pick up this book today and start reading it.
Yeah. I mean, I think what the biggest thing it's doing for parents, the biggest feedback I'm getting is that it's freeing parents to parent the way they
Mm,
intuitively want to parent.
yes.
It's almost like we're set up, and I have like 30 myths in the book to just free yourself from.
Mm,
And then the rest of the book is replacing those myths with, information, science-based information. I think what we're set up right now is that we're constricted in our parenting. It's like almost like we have, big brother kind of like
mm,
telling us what to do and watching us, and other people policing us, family and friends, and,
yes.
being like, don't hold the baby too much. Don't cuddle the baby too much. Don't sleep close to your baby too much. All of these
Yeah.
things that are the
Yeah.
most instinctual, intuitive things for us to be doing. And the book really will say, throw all that out, say thanks but no thanks. Look within
Yeah.
and hold your baby as much as feels good. Sleep as close to your baby as feels good. Interact with your baby and support them, and just have a presence, that is accepting and loving for your baby. There's so many power dynamics set up. Like, you have to control your baby. They have to be independent. They have to sleep
This
alone. They have to
independence thing.
play alone. It's all, yeah, it's like imprisoning for parents. And I think that the book really just frees so many people.
Mm,
Write to me or speak to me, bawling their eyes out. Like, thank you. I'm just going to hold my baby as much as I want now. Like, how are we in this place? Like,
that
look at
moms feel like
any
they
other
need
mammal.
permission. They need permission to love their babies. It's,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
it
not
is
only is
absolutely,
it, and people are saying it's harmful to hold too much, it's harmful to be responsive, right? It's not only not harmful, it's not just neutral, it is the best thing you could possibly do for your baby. And so many people come from this place of like, oh, I'm so bad. I like hold my baby for naps and I respond to them every time they cry. I'm like the worst mother, to, oh, actually, I'm the most, influential, powerful person in
Mm-hmm.
my baby's life. And when I do hold them, I'm doing incredible brain building, incredible
Yeah.
work for my baby. And it is not easy. We all know that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and you know what? Parenting isn't easy, the low
Mm.
nurture way or the high nurture way. So I say invest in high nurture in those early years, front load the work a little bit,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
all the challenges, a lot of the challenges we see parents have with babies after 3, children after 3,
Yeah.
they'll be seriously reduced, if not mitigated by it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember looking at one study, I think it was 2022. It was Alyssa Ethel. It was a really lovely study of some experts on, kind of, brain science. And they were looking at the effect of moms who just did, I think it was 8 weeks of mindfulness practice during their pregnancy. They found that the infant stress response was different for these
Mm-hmm.
moms. And these moms came from, I think, quite high levels of poverty and ethnically diverse. So we're not talking about the, average mom on the street who has access to gynecologists and obstetricians and acupuncturists and all this and
Mm-hmm.
other ways to reduce their stress. But the fact that they could show this impact, not just on the baby stress system, I think it's on glucose control as well. So I think it's these little moments of nurture. I think we have to be clear. We're not expecting any mom to just go sit on the couch now and coo over her baby for the next 12 hours until her partner gets home.
Yes.
Life happens. You're going to have tough days, tough
Mm-hmm.
moments. But again, I think what your book beautifully describes is that yes, it matters, but there's lots you can do to repair that and continue building that relationship. I think there is, and Michelle O'Donnell talks about this a lot about, we need stress in our lives, a certain level of stress. There's a
Yeah.
healthy level of stress, but it's when we get to that overwhelming stress and we are emotionally dysregulated. It's like,
Yeah.
why can't we teach emotion regulation in schools? It's why, like, it is such an important part of, like, for kids who just cannot emotionally
Yeah.
regulate themselves, and teenagers. It's like, should be as important as, reading and writing, that we have kids that are aware of that mental health is a thing, and there are things that they can do to self nurture, in their own little ways as
Yeah.
kids.
I know it's amazing that people, when they turn 30 or 40 sometime, somewhere in that range, they're like, how come no one ever taught me how to breathe or practice
Yeah.
mindfulness or do anything to regulate my nervous system?
Yeah.
Um, I think it's different now. I know even in my son's school in kindergarten, they're starting that. I know a lot of teacher friends I have
Mm.
are bringing that stuff into the classroom, which they need because there's higher levels of mental health issues than ever in
Yes.
classrooms
Yeah.
because of a lot of reasons, but certainly this experience in early life is part of it.
Yeah.
Um, so that's good that they're like learning more, but yeah, we can definitely do better. We can definitely do better with
And
it.
what would what are kind of one or two of the, like, the biggest myths that you're busting in your book
Yeah,
that we all kind of assumed are the truth
for sure.
as
I
new
mean,
parents?
self-soothing is the biggest myth, the biggest one, because that goes, behind like your spoil, like all the things I already said. You know, you got to let them cry and scream a little bit every day. They have to, some people, I think someone messaged me recently saying their doctor said their baby has to cry and scream for at least an hour a day to learn this. Um,
Hmm.
Parents, everyone hears this from somebody in their life, right? Whether it's your
Yeah.
doctor, um, friends, family, whatever. They have to learn to
Oh,
self-soothe. And what's the self-soothing really means self-regulation. And the definition of that is going from a state of high stress to a state of lower stress or regulation. state, right? And so that's the biggest myth. Babies cannot self-soothe, meaning self-regulate. They cannot go from a state of high stress to low stress on their own. They must do it through co-regulation.
Well, let me play devil's advocate there, because we're going to have, there's going to be lots of moms watching this saying, well, I followed my pediatrician's recommendation or someone's recommendations, and I followed a sleep training program and
Mhm.
to teach them to be independent, to self-soothe.
Yeah.
And it worked. It only
Mhm.
took 3 nights of my
Yeah.
baby screaming for an hour, and then he screamed less. And
Mhm.
so what's your response to that?
Yeah.
Did it work, or did the baby just decide nobody's coming? And
Yeah. Yeah. So I think one of the parts of infant mental health that's so important for parents to understand is how the baby's stress system works, right? So babies, once they're stressed, so they have high cortisol in their bodies, high stress, and they're probably first in fight or flight, which is the crying, screaming, arch back. It can escalate from there too. They usually will go into that state, right? And that's the state where they're really like, help me, I need help, someone come. And we go to them and we co-regulate them. We bring their stress down and they will stop crying as they go into a, parasympathetic state, a
parasympathetic,
rest
yeah,
and digest state, right? The other route, and then maybe to sleep, right? Through that route, through the calm route.
sure.
When we don't respond, when we are sort of following those directions to, self-soothe in air quotes, the babies will go through fight or flight and then get into a higher state of stress, which is a shut down, dissociate, sleep route.
Mm,
And so they might also fall asleep, but it will be through a stress state, not a rest
mm.
state. And 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 they do stop signaling over a couple days. Sometimes, I mean, the newest study, the NANET study, showed babies were crying for 25 to 45 days for
Oh,
typical sleep training. So there are some that's 3 nights, where it is 3 nights, but then there's those other ones,
all right.
several months. And I've been in many homes where babies are crying every single nap to sleep, every single night to sleep.
Mm.
It just becomes the norm, right? But some do extinguish. I think a Canadian study showed about 15% of babies who are sleep trained at home do extinguish, which is extremely low. Only
And
15%.
when you say extinguish, for anyone who hasn't come across
Right,
that term
they'll
before,
stop crying after, the 3 nights or so.
yeah,
So it's, if it doesn't work, that's probably, that's another reason. And so they essentially learn, if I cry in this environment, no one is going to come. And so it's sort of a conservation mechanism. It's actually using a survival mechanism babies have, um, to stop them from signaling, right? So you imagine, Niles Bergman always uses this example. He's a researcher as well, that, if you were in hunter-gatherer days, an event comes, something scary
mm,
comes, someone stashes a baby, behind a rock or like in a cave or
yeah,
something, and they start to cry and no one comes. It's way more advantageous if they shut down, go into that dissociate, shut down,
instead
sleep.
of bringing a predator into the cave. Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. And so it's using that survival mechanism babies have. And then they will learn, right, over those 3 days plus, if they eventually do stop crying, that yes, that they, in that environment, no one comes. So it's not a good idea to make noise. A predator could be there,
yeah.
or I'm going to waste my energy, right? I need my energy for other things.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fascinating to look at that, kind of the evolutionary benefit really for how these, babies respond to the environment,
Yeah.
for self-preservation. And
Yeah. And they
yeah,
really are tied to that environment, because if a family travels, doesn't sleep training has to
mm,
happen again. If the parent starts responding again, if a baby's sick, sometimes parents will say, "Oh, they're sick. Of course we're gonna go
yeah,
in." Then the baby's like, "Oh, I've learned they do respond," and then they'll
Yeah.
start signaling again, and then it has to be done again. So there's no evidence that any baby's learning to self-soothe through that. There's
Mm.
no evidence they're learning, anything other than to stop signaling, right? And a lot of people will bring up, the baby who does go through those 3 nights and then never makes a peep again, ever again.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a couple reasons. One could be that's like a very easygoing baby.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen babies with no distress be laid down
Mm-hmm.
awake and just kind of snuggle themselves to sleep. They're extremely rare. I met one in real life. I heard about them and I was like, I have to meet this baby. She really did it. So they could be kind of in that range,
Yeah.
right? Or they could be extremely sensitive babies who are like,
Mm.
whoa, that was, such an event. Like, I'm really not gonna
Yeah.
try again, right? So we don't really know. There's not much research done on it, actually.
Yeah. This whole idea though of, independence, like it's almost like we, spend 9 months, can't wait to get them, can't wait to have them. And then it's like, now they're here, it's like, no, you go figure that out.
Yeah,
He's had enough
absolutely.
he's had enough of listening to me. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
out of here.
that's why I think it's really freeing for people, right? Because they do
Yeah.
come home, they are so excited to hug and cuddle their baby, and then their night nurse or their aunt is like, "Whoa, you better not do that.
You are
You are
spoiling.
bad if you do that. That is
Yeah.
spoiling." And
Mm-hmm.
then they're like what? Where do we find ourselves then if a mother cannot trust her gut? It's a very, very unhealthy,
Yeah.
mentally unhealthy place to be. And it's just not fair. It's not serving anybody.
So self-soothing is probably number one. What would
Yeah.
be another very common one that is a big one? Because even in
Yeah.
my midwifery training, I remember hearing other midwives telling moms not to pick up, like I'm talking about a brand new fresh baby, a couple of hours
Mm-hmm.
old, and the baby's put into the casserole dish, the glass dish beside you
Mm-hmm.
here, and moms, naturally, like, you're driven, like you're, it's a physiological response when your baby cries to go to your baby,
Yeah.
being told you're making a rod for your back. If you keep going to that baby, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
spoil the baby. And that is still so prevalent in our society that, yeah, I'm like, spoil them. They'll be running out the door when you blink in a couple of years. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and
If
it's
you
actually
can,
the opposite. I don't want to say you're spoiling because that's a horrible thing to say to anybody for
yeah,
anything. Um, but when you are really responsive and have a lot of closeness in those early years, it's building tremendous health. And if
hmm
you do try to have lots of separation and let babies cry and all that kind of stuff, it is introducing vulnerability
yeah,
and that the baby wouldn't otherwise have. Right? So it is the opposite. It is the opposite. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, the spoiling's a big one. Trying to think, what are the other huge ones? I haven't gone over these in a while.
Yeah. Or
Um,
if you put them in your bed, you'll never get them out of your bed, and
yeah,
they'll
the
be
sleeping is a
going to
really big one.
college and still in your bed. Yeah.
The sleep is a really big one. I think the other one is that really bugs me. Um, is the schedules. And so there's a couple myths in there of like, you know, you have to feed baby on a schedule, they have to
Oh,
sleep
yeah,
on a
yeah.
schedule, they have to do all these things. And this is all kind of based on the idea that some external person in the world who's never met or touched or looked at your baby can tell you when your baby's hungry or
Yeah.
tell you when your baby's tired. And this also just totally undermines parents,
Yes.
undermines their intuition. And so that myth, like, that's a huge one to throw out. I've had tons of parents come to me with deep postpartum anxiety and depression. The second we go over this, they're like, "Oh, I'm cured. Like, I'm great. Like, this is all because, what do you end up doing? You end up withholding food from babies, um,
Yeah.
waking them up when they're sleeping, making them try to sleep when they're not tired. Like, so, I always tell parents, like, the only person who's going to tell you when your baby is hungry or tired is your baby. And they have
Mm-hmm.
communication and they will tell you. I had someone message me the other day, her newborn, 6 weeks old, is taking a 3-hour nap in the morning and then a couple other little naps throughout the day. Her doctor said, no, you have to wake them up, like that 3-hour nap, wake them up.
Oh, come on.
And I'm like, the doctors are supposed, it just really bothered me. I wanted to say it somewhere. And it's like, we outside people have no clue what kind of brain activity is happening in that baby. Sleep is a place of consolidating memory, cleaning out the brain, building connections and learning, growing. And if you have no idea what that brain's going through, no idea what the sleep cycles it's going through, you're going to say some arbitrary number that this baby should be napping for and waking them up from. I'm just like, this is a newborn too. I mean, I wouldn't agree to that for older ones either, but yeah. So all of that to say, big myth that any schedule, a routine, great, no big deal. But any sort of schedule, like eating this many hours apart, sleeping this many hours apart, major myth based on nothing. There's no reference you can find for these things. So
yeah,
that's another one that bothers me.
Yeah, there is so much misinformation, and I think we could cope with the misinformation a little better if we had a little bit more trust in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's almost like our intuition is trained out of us, even from the very beginning of pregnancy. It's like, because the experts are going to tell us everything. They're going to tell us what to do and everything, and we really just don't trust ourselves to know, really, to connect in with our inner wisdom, to see, does that feel right for me?
Yeah.
And my
And I think we're separated from it as babies. Because, a lot, and I go through in my book as well, like supporting babies and children's emotions, helping them understand how they feel in their body, naming them. Many of us grew up, anytime we got sad or upset, was stop it. I don't want to see it. Go in the other room, or just stop it right now. So all of those, kinds of, connections were, suppressed very, very early on, or gaslit. Like, you're fine.
Yes.
Stop it. Like, don't cry. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
You fell, you're bleeding. Stop. Like, you're fine. Yeah. You're not dead. Mm-hmm. I see parents do this all the time, right? And it's all conditioned. It's nobody's fault. I'm not blaming parents. It's just in our things, in our circuits, right? So yeah, we learn all that stuff really young. Yeah. That's why it's hard to see it.
What you're recommending in your book, though, all these, these little mindfulness practices, is because I think there's this idea out there that mindfulness is a relaxation technique. So I'm sure people are thinking, well, how does relaxation help my baby? But if we kind of go back and look at, the Buddhist tradition or contemplative traditions, mindfulness is about really kind of getting familiar with your mind, starting to notice what is going on up there. That I think for, at any stage of life to, be curious, or I had to say, become the nosy neighbor of your mind, and be curious about how your own, how you were parented is likely to influence how you will parent. And it's such a subconscious level that we probably don't even recognize it. So I do love that emphasis you have on just these little moments of starting to, notice our stress levels, notice our thought patterns, and starting to just be curious about how we got to where we are as adults, and the many, positive and negative influences that we've had in our lives, and that it's not game over. There's so much in pregnancy, that neuroplasticity as well. It's like you've got this brilliant window, this opportunity, these couple of years to really, do some good for your brain, which is of course going to do good for your overall health.
Yeah, and that can reconnecting with your intuition, reconnecting with how you
Yeah.
feel, how you react to
Mm.
things without like you can kind of learn to like remove that, you know, that probably that pattern of like pushing that stuff aside, shoving it down, ignoring
Yeah.
it. Um, it's a great invitation to learn how
Yes.
to reconnect with it. And a lot of people find that. They find that they have way more self-awareness and regulation,
Mm.
and they can stop people pleasing, they can be more authentic,
Exactly.
all this
Yeah, it's
wonderful stuff. We get
huge.
liberated.
Yeah. Dr. Kirshenbaum, thank you so much for spending the time with me today, and for everybody. Tell us where everyone can get your book.
Yeah, you can get my book wherever books are sold. I love supporting local bookstores. So you can ask your local bookstore to order it in, or they may have it. And otherwise, all the online places will have it as well.
Great. And do you have a website where people can reach out to you if they want more information?
Yeah, absolutely. I do lots of teaching and um, all that kind of great stuff. My website is
Great.
nurture-neuroscience.com.
Great. And I'll include that in the show notes as well. I'll have a link, all of your links. Thank you so much. This has been really helpful. I hope it's going to be extra helpful for parents or expectant parents that are watching and have heard a little bit about nurture and what they can do to support their own mental health. And especially at the moment in the world, we could all do with a little bit of self-nurturing and
Mhm.
self-compassion. So I do appreciate all of your wonderful advice and information. It's been lovely.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy. So nice to be
Thank
here.
you so much. We will talk again.
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode. Remember, empowerment begins with knowledge. If you enjoyed our time together and want more content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Stay inspired, stay informed, and until next time, take care of yourself.